There are places that were never meant to be entered, walls that were never meant to echo your voice, and stories fragmented, fractured, feverish that were never meant to be pieced together. Asylum 1972 wasn't just a horror anthology, it was a whispered warning, a descent into the subconscious where every room, every patient, every smile hides a fracture in reality. Directed by Roy Ward Baker and written by Robert Bloch, the twisted mind behind Psycho, this British cult classic unfolds within the cold, oppressive corridors of a mental institution where 4 patients tell their tales, but only one is hiding a deeper truth. The setup seems simple. An interview for a job turns into a guessing game about sanity and identity. But what lies beneath is far more sinister. Mannequins that move, body parts that crawl, and a mind so broken it turns reality into a riddle. Behind its modest production is a labyrinth of disturbing ideas, real-life inspirations, and behind-the-scenes chaos that even the producers didn't want to talk about. Some stories were toned down because they were too disturbing. Others were added to cover up something darker that happened off camera. And the twist at the end? It may not have been fiction. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Asylum 1972. And by the time we reach the last one, you might start questioning your own memory of the film, if it ever existed at all. Fact 1. A script too twisted, even for Bloch. When you ask horror fans about Asylum, most recall its surreal patience and supernatural chills, but few realize that its writer Robert Bloch was terrified of his own creation. Best known for Psycho, Bloch had long explored the minds of killers, yet with Asylum, he admitted that something felt different. It was like the stories were writing themselves, he once said, and I couldn't predict where they were going. Bloch structured Asylum as an anthology, each segment revealing a new form of madness. But according to production notes from Amicus Films, at least 2 early drafts were rejected not because they were poorly written, but because the endings were too ambiguous and emotionally disturbing. One cut ending allegedly involved the final character realizing they were dead the whole time, only to be resurrected in a looping purgatory. Even Bloch called it unfilmable. The final version still carries that surreal weight, mannequins coming to life, crawling dismembered limbs, and patients who may or may not exist. It walks a delicate line between sanity and illusion, making the viewer question their own perspective. To this day, no full copies of the rejected drafts have surfaced. Only fragments remain in interviews and studio letters. But one thing's clear, Bloch wasn't just writing horror, he was unearthing something he could barely control. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the film still feels so wrong. Fact 2. The mannequin that moved on its own. One of the film's most haunting segments features a mannequin named Otto, gifted to a tailor by a mysterious customer. Otto is lifeless at first, then eerily animated, but what happened behind the scenes was stranger than anything on screen. According to assistant art director Andrew Clegg, the mannequin prop was designed with hidden mechanical joints for subtle movement. However, several crew members swore it moved when no one was touching it. During one shoot, the camera operator shouted and dropped his equipment, convinced Otto had shifted position between takes despite no cue being given and no wires connected. The production team laughed it off at first, blaming nerves, but soon, even seasoned crew members began requesting to rotate out of the Otto scene. One grip even walked off the set entirely, muttering about bad spirits in plastic skin. Some speculate that the Otto mannequin was reused from an earlier, now lost horror film known for occult themes. Others believe it was just mass hysteria amplified by long hours and creepy material. Regardless, Roy Ward Baker allegedly rewrote part of the Otto segment to reduce its screen time, though fans later complained the story felt unfinished. Today, Otto is missing. No one knows where the original prop went after filming wrap. Some say it was destroyed. Others say it walked off on its own. Fact 3. Peter Cushing's unplanned breakdown. Peter Cushing was the anchor of British horror, the calm in the storm. But on the set of Asylum, something cracked. Cast as Mr. Smith in The Weird Tailor segment, Cushing arrived on set composed as always. Yet, during one take, he froze mid-line. Then his eyes filled with tears. The room went dead silent. Crew members thought it was acting, but Cushing didn't continue. He just stood there, trembling. Roy Ward Baker called cut, but Cushing didn't respond. A production assistant had to escort him off set. What no one knew was that Cushing had just received a letter that morning, news of a close friend's death. He hadn't told anyone. The emotional strain, combined with the macabre set, was too much. He returned the next day, professional as ever, and insisted they not mention the incident. but something changed in his performance. Viewers have noted the deep sadness behind his eyes, especially in his final scene. Cushing once said, "Grief and horror are cousins. They both ask you to confront the impossible." On that day, he wasn't just acting, he was surviving. Fact 4. The missing fifth story. Asylum is known for its 4 central patient tales, each more disturbing than the last. But what most fans don't realize is that there was supposed to be a 5th story, one that never made it past rehearsals. According to production memos from Amicus Films, a segment called The Reflection was fully scripted and even partially cast before being abruptly scrapped. The plot? A patient obsessed with mirrors begins to see another version of herself in the reflection, one more confident, seductive, and cruel. Eventually, the reflection escapes the glass and replaces her in the real world. The reasons for its removal are murky. Some claim budget cuts, others whisper about actress conflicts, but one note stands out: too metaphysical. Distorts the anthology's tone. Bloch reportedly pushed for the segment, calling it his most personal horror allegory. When the studio declined, he responded coldly, "Fine, then the mirror wins." Years later, fragments of the Reflections dialogue were allegedly used in another Bloch story published in a pulp magazine, but no footage was shot, and the full script remains unreleased. Fans still debate whether a 5th tale would have enhanced or disrupted Asylum's balance. But for a film obsessed with identity, illusion, and madness, the idea of a hidden, erased story is hauntingly poetic. Maybe we were never meant to see it. Fact 5. The murder that came too close to home. 1 week into filming, tragedy struck uncomfortably close to the set. A man was found dead in a small flat not far from Shepperton Studios, stabbed 17 times, with his arms twisted behind his back in a pose eerily similar to one shown in the film's 2nd segment. Local papers didn't draw any connection, but the Asylum crew did. Whispers spread that the killer might have been inspired by the leaked synopsis floating around the area. Security was tightened. Night shoots were suspended for 3 days. Director Roy Ward Baker was deeply shaken. In an internal memo, he wrote, "We're conjuring demons. I just hope none of them are listening." Police eventually arrested a suspect, an estranged ex-partner with a history of mental illness. No ties to the production were found, but the coincidence stuck. Crew members began refusing to read full scripts at night. One assistant editor even slept with the lights on for the remainder of post-production. Was it a fluke? A grim echo of fiction bleeding into reality? Or was Asylum tapping into something deeper, something too real? Fact 6. A set built to disorient. Most films build sets to enhance a story. Asylum built theirs to disorient the people inside it. Production designer Tony Curtis, not the actor, had one instruction from the director: make the corridors feel like they're swallowing you. To achieve this, Curtis intentionally constructed the hospital hallways with incorrect proportions, doors slightly too small, windows placed at asymmetrical heights, and floors that subtly sloped downward even when they appeared flat. The result was a creeping sense of unease, even when nothing was happening. Actors reportedly struggled with balance during long takes. One scene had to be reshot because the dolly operator couldn't keep the camera straight. He felt like the hallway was tilting into itself. Even the color palette was designed to manipulate emotion. Greens were faded, blues oversaturated. "We wanted it to feel like the building itself was sick," Curtis said in a rare interview. The goal wasn't just to disturb the viewer, it was to make the cast question their space, their sense of orientation, their own reality. After production wrapped, several crew members visited the set one last time. One said the lights flickered constantly. Another claimed he couldn't find the same exit he'd used for weeks. The set was demolished shortly after, but for those who walked its halls, the feeling never really left. Fact 7. The wraparound that came last. Most anthology films build their framing story first. It's the spine that holds all the segments together. But Asylum did the opposite. The iconic wraparound plot, where a young doctor interviews patients to guess who among them was once the asylum director, was conceived after the individual segments were finished. According to Amicus producer Max Rosenberg, the initial plan was to use a narrator device voiceover only, no connective tissue. But the early test edits felt hollow. "The segments were eerie," Rosenberg said, "but we needed a reason to fear what connected them." So Robert Bloch and Roy Ward Baker went back to the drawing board. In just under 2 weeks, they rewrote and shot the wraparound the tale of Dr. Martin navigating the asylum, talking to 4 disturbed patients, and being led unknowingly into a trap. Ironically, this late addition became the film's most enduring element. Its slow burn paranoia and final twist reframed the entire experience. The patient interviews weren't just creepy, they were a test, and Martin was the last subject. In a strange way, Asylum diagnosed its own structure, and its prognosis was madness. Fact 8. The tape that vanished. During post-production, a 16mm reel containing dailies from the Lucy Comes to Stay segment mysteriously disappeared. The footage included several alternate takes, some reportedly more violent than the theatrical version. Editor Peter Tanner confirmed the reel's existence in a 1980 interview. "We shot some versions where the violence was more implied, others more explicit. Then one day, a reel just vanished. No one checked it out. No one logged it." Amicus Films never issued an internal investigation, assuming it was misplaced. But whispers quickly spread. Some believed the reel had been stolen by a disgruntled crew member who objected to the mental illness themes. Others say it was accidentally reused in another production. Stranger still, 2 frames from the lost reel resurfaced years later in a BBC horror documentary, flashes of Charlotte Rampling with eyes wide in terror, blood splashed on the wall behind her, but no such scene exists in the final cut. The missing tape has since become a myth among horror collectors. Some claim to have seen it at underground screenings. Others believe it was destroyed deliberately, due to something in the footage no one was supposed to see. But what was on it, and why did it disappear without a trace? Fact 9. The sound that wasn't recorded. In one scene from the segment, Mannequins of Horror, a disembodied voice whispers a phrase just as the mannequin begins to move. It's faint, barely audible, almost subliminal. Fans have argued for decades over what it says. Some hear, "Let me in." Others hear, "It's not over." But here's the twist. The line wasn't in the script, and it wasn't in the sound mix. Sound designer Peter Musgrave swore under oath during a 1974 rights dispute that the line was never recorded, never designed, and never placed in post. He insisted it must be a phenomenon of interference or audience imagination, yet audio engineers later isolated the waveform from the scene and confirmed, there is a voice, layered under the score, untagged and unmarked. The studio's master mix sheet lists no dialogue for that time code, and the original composer, Douglas Gamley, denied inserting anything hidden or reversed. To this day, no official explanation exists. Some believe it was a prank by a disgruntled technician. Others think it was a frequency illusion, our minds filling in the gaps. And a few, those who've worked in sound long enough, claim sometimes things just find their way into the reel on their own. Fact 10. The costume that didn't exist. In the segment The Weird Tailor, the eerie suit stitched for a corpse is central to the story's supernatural tension. But the production faced a strange problem. The costume didn't exist. According to costume supervisor Daphne Howard, the script called for a handmade, otherworldly suit, crafted with ceremonial markings and strange geometry. Wardrobe began designing weeks in advance, but no version ever looked right. Every time we finished a version, Howard recalled, it would disappear. I don't mean stolen, I mean gone, vanished overnight. Security was increased. A storage room was locked specifically for the costume. Yet the final version seen in the film was assembled in just 2 hours, using scraps from old military uniforms and altar cloth. The stitching was done by candlelight on set, by a props assistant with no prior sewing experience. The result? An uncanny, asymmetrical garment that moved oddly on screen because it wasn't designed to fit anyone, it just hung. Some viewers have pointed out inconsistencies in the costume's appearance across shots. Sleeves appear to lengthen, patches appear and disappear. Most chalk it up to continuity errors, but according to Howard, we stopped tracking it after day 2. That suit didn't want to be documented. Maybe it stitched itself. Fact 11. The actress who never spoke again. Barbara Parkins delivered one of the most haunting performances in Lucy Comes to Stay, portraying a woman tormented by an imaginary friend, or perhaps something darker. Her quiet descent into madness felt so authentic that some viewers assumed she had experienced mental illness herself. What they didn't know, Parkins quit acting shortly after filming wrapped, and for 2 full years, she stopped speaking in public. Friends initially thought it was method acting, but in a 1981 interview, Parkins broke her silence. I saw something on that set, something in the mirror. It smiled, but I wasn't smiling. She never clarified the story, but multiple crew members recalled Barbara avoiding reflections, refusing to rehearse any scenes involving glass. One makeup artist claimed Parkins demanded that all mirrors be covered when she wasn't filming. After Asylum, she declined several high-profile roles, including a part in Don't Look Now and a lead in The Omen. She cited emotional burnout and the feeling of being watched. To this day, she refuses to attend conventions or participate in retrospectives about Asylum. Her final words in the film echo eerily, "I know she's still here. I can hear her breathing." Fact 12. The patient who inspired everything. Robert Bloch was known for his dark imagination, but for Asylum, he may have drawn inspiration from a real patient, a woman he briefly met while researching mental institutions in the late 1962. The woman, known only as E. Lang, had been institutionalized for claiming to be multiple people at once, each with their own memories, voice, and even handwriting. Bloch's notes from the visit describe her as lucid, charming, then abruptly absent, like the light behind her eyes turned off. One of her personas believed she was a doctor. Another claimed she had died already. The final one, according to Bloch, simply whispered, "He's watching me write this." Several ideas from Asylum mirror the structure of Lang's delusions. The wraparound story, the shifting realities in each tale, the loss of control all resonate with her condition. Bloch never publicly admitted the connection, but years later, in a private letter, he referred to Asylum as the closest I've come to transcription. No one knows what happened to E. Lang. Her records were sealed. Her fate is unknown. But if she ever saw the film, she might have recognized the walls, the voices, the feeling of being trapped in someone else's story, because it may have once been hers. Fact 13. The head that wouldn't stop bleeding. In Mannequins of Horror, a dismembered mannequin head becomes an object of obsession, rolling, twitching, whispering. The prop itself was a marvel of 1,970 seconds effects, rubber, silicone, painted with meticulous veins. But one day, it began to bleed. Makeup artist Joyce Graham was the first to notice. "We were doing touch-ups and red liquid began leaking from the left ear canal. Not corn syrup, not fake blood, something oily, metallic, smelling." Thinking it was a prank, she wiped it off. But minutes later, more fluid seeped through the eye socket. A technician opened the prop and found a sealed vial had cracked inside. Was a prototype chemical blood mix designed for a previous Amicus production but never used. It had somehow survived and fermented. Rather than discard the prop, director Roy Ward Baker kept it in. "It added realism," he shrugged. Yet during shooting, cast avoided eye contact with the head. Actor Herbert Lom allegedly refused to do close-ups near it. "That thing was alive," he said half-jokingly. To this day, the original head is missing. No museum has it, no collector claims it. But one assistant swore he saw it turn just a little. Fact 14. The producer who walked out forever, Amicus co-founder Milton Subotsky, had a hand in nearly every horror hit the studio delivered. But Asylum marked a silent exit. Midway through production, he vanished, leaving a two-line note. "It's not the script, it's what's between the lines." No explanation. No return. Crew believed it was stress or burnout, but insiders hinted at a deeper unease. Subotsky was a devout man, and some close to him claimed he felt Asylum flirted with blasphemy disguised as entertainment. In particular, the Weird Tailor segment disturbed him. A suit stitched for resurrection? To Subotsky, that wasn't fiction, it was heresy. He returned to the studio months later, quietly resuming other projects, but he never spoke of Asylum again. He avoided interviews, declined anniversary events, and refused to have his name associated with the film's remastering in the 2000s. Some say he saw something in the rushes that broke his resolve. Others believe it was the tone, the way Asylum didn't just entertain darkness, but invited it in. Whatever the reason, the man who shaped British horror simply turned and walked into the shadows, and never looked back. Fact 15. The room that never appears. Fans who rewatch Asylum closely will notice something strange. Characters frequently refer to Room 19. Nurses mention it, a patient mumbles about it. Even Dr. Martin glances at a chart labeled R19, yet the room is never shown. The script includes a scene set there, an empty ward, completely silent, with walls covered in scratch marks. But it was never filmed, or so the official story goes. Actor Barry Morse claimed they did shoot a version of the Room 19 scene. "We did it at night, one camera, no audio, just breathing." But then the reel disappeared. Sound familiar? Amicus archives confirm a production note referencing Room 19 insert, postponed indefinitely. No further explanation. In fan forums, theories abound. Some believe the scene was cursed. Others think it revealed too much, possibly connecting the four stories more directly. exposing the asylum as something non-human. Years later, during a digital restoration, a single frame was uncovered, a dim hallway with a plaque, R19, just one frame. No accompanying footage, a glitch, or a reminder that room 19 was always there. Watching? Fact 16. The twist that wasn't in the script. The final twist in Asylum, where Dr. Martin is revealed to be the new inmate, has been praised as one of the most chilling reveals in anthology horror. But that moment, it was never in the original script. Robert Bloch's draft ended differently. In his version, Dr. Martin escapes the asylum, shaken but unchanged. A conventional wrap-up. It was Roy Ward Baker who pushed for a darker resolution. It felt too clean, he later said. We needed to trap the viewer, not just the character. So the ending was rewritten just days before shooting. The actor playing Dr. Martin wasn't informed until the night prior. His reaction, blank, disturbed, was real. In fact, a camera kept rolling after cut, catching him staring in disbelief at the straitjacket he was suddenly forced into. Bloch initially opposed the change, but after seeing the rough cut, he admitted, "You made it worse, which means you made it better." That final shot, Dr. Martin, confused, restrained, and forgotten, left a question lingering in every viewer's mind. Was he ever sane to begin with? Fact 17. The music that disappeared between mixes. Douglas Gamley's eerie score gave Asylum its dreamlike, unsteady pulse. But not all of it made it into the final film. In fact, a full 6 minutes of recorded music mysteriously vanished between the sound mix and the theatrical release. According to archival logs, Gamley delivered a suite titled Echoes of the Ward, meant to underscore the wraparound's midpoint. A mournful, droning melody with chimes that mimicked the sound of pills dropping into a metal tray. It was mixed, signed off, and then gone. When the theatrical version premiered, that suite was missing. Silence filled the intended scene. Gamley was furious. In a letter to a colleague, he wrote, "That was the soul of the movie. Someone stole it." The studio claimed a storage error, but decades later, when the soundtrack was remastered for vinyl, the missing suite was still absent. No tapes, no backups, no stems. The oddest part? Fans who saw early European prints insist the music was there. They remember it, they can hum it. They've described identical melodies, despite no access to each other's memories. So if it was never recorded, what exactly are they remembering? Fact 18. The face behind the mannequin. In the final story of Asylum, the most unsettling image isn't a monster, it's the face of a blank mannequin staring back at us. But according to cinematographer Dennis Koop, that face wasn't supposed to be blank. Early concept art shows the mannequin head with a flat expression, no features. But after the first week of shooting, Koop noticed the prop looked human. The cheekbones were subtly raised, the eyes slightly asymmetrical. "It looked like someone I knew," he said. He wasn't alone. Different crew members began reporting that the mannequin resembled someone else each time they looked. A former lover, a missing relative, a deceased friend. One night, when reviewing footage frame by frame, Koop swore the mannequin blinked, just once. No one else saw it. But the next day, he refused to shoot any more close-ups. "It was mimicking us," he told the director. Special effects denied ever changing the mold. Photos taken on day one show a smooth, inhuman face, but in the final cut, there's something too specific about the contours. Do familiar. Maybe that's the real horror, not that the mannequin moved, but that it was always watching, waiting to become someone else. Fact 19. The writer who left a warning. After Asylum wrapped, Robert Bloch didn't celebrate. He disappeared to a cabin in Oregon for several months. No interviews, no signings, no press. Only one letter surfaced during that time. A short note he mailed to a fellow horror writer. It read, "Never write too close to the mirror. Sometimes the reflection bleeds through." To this day, scholars debate what he meant. Some say he was referring to the segment Lucy Comes to Stay, which dealt directly with duality and psychosis. Others think it was a personal confession. Bloch had reportedly begun having nightmares during production, often waking in cold sweats, unable to speak for minutes. Friends noticed he became withdrawn. When asked about Asylum in a 1976 panel, he simply said, "Some stories you write, others write back." That phrase stuck. In later interviews, Bloch never again discussed Asylum in detail. It remained his most structurally daring screenplay and his most elusive. Even now, his annotated draft shows strange marginalia, circled words, arrows pointing to nothing, phrases like, "It's inside the wall," scrawled in the margins. Maybe Asylum wasn't just about madness. Maybe it was written inside it. Fact 20. The frame that shouldn't exist. At precisely 1:12 47 inches the original theatrical cut. As Dr. Martin walks down the corridor toward the basement, there's a flicker one frame that's been the subject of endless debate. Some see static. Others claim to see a face. When slowed down, enhanced, and paused, the frame reveals a blurry black and white image, a man in a lab coat, grinning. But it's not anyone in the film, not cast, not crew. No ID match in Amicus archives. Originally dismissed as an editing glitch, the mystery deepened when collectors compared international versions. In one German print, the frame is missing. In a French TV broadcast, it appears earlier. In a 2011 Blu-ray, the frame is clearer. Too clear. It's not part of any official scene, and no script draft includes it, yet fans recognize it. He's appeared in dreams, forums, fan art, the man with no name, no lines, and no reason to be there. He's smiling, like he knows something you don't. Bonus fact, Asylum's endless loop. Here's the question no one wants to answer. What if Asylum never ends? The film's final twist shows the cycle repeating. Dr. Martin becomes the inmate, and a new doctor arrives to begin the same test. But what if that wasn't just a horror trope, but a metaphysical trap? Some scholars argue the film is a Mobius strip, a narrative loop that locks characters and viewers into an eternal asylum. Every rewatch isn't just analysis, it's participation. You're the next visitor, you're the next candidate. The repeating names, the mirror references, the vanishing reel, the missing music, all hints toward recursion, toward the idea that the asylum isn't a building, it's a system, a consciousness, a place you enter the moment you ask, which one of them is truly insane? Because maybe it's always been you. Tell us in the comments, which story from Asylum disturbed you the most, and which one felt just a little too real, like if you made it through without looking over your shoulder. Subscribe if you believe madness is just a matter of perspective, and let us know which film we should lock ourselves inside next. Until then, sleep well. And remember, if you ever hear scratching behind your wall, don't answer. It's just the mannequins talking.